Good evening. I'm calling this meeting to order. The time is 5:31 p.m. in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. This meeting is officially open with a quorum present. At this time, we will hear public comment. Let me remind you that because of restrictions by the Texas Open Meetings Act, board members may listen but not engage in a verbal exchange about a subject that has not been posted. We will listen and take notes, but the board is prohibited from responding to any inquiries made during a board meeting on any topic not posted on the agenda. However, the board may reply with 1, a statement of specific factual information given in response to the inquiry. 2, recitation of existing policy in response to the inquiry. 3, direct the person to visit with staff about the issue. While the board listens to concerns of a general nature, speakers should practice normal rules of decorum. Vulgar language and profanity will not be tolerated, as this is a public meeting and our students are watching. Additionally, disruptions of the meeting will not be tolerated. We ask the audience to refrain from interrupting speakers while they present to the board during this portion of the meeting. Any employee, parent, or other member of the public is asked to comply with the appropriate grievance policy to have a complaint heard pursuant to the applicable board policy. No presentation may exceed 3 minutes unless the speaker has prior approval for additional time because of the use of a translator. Speakers who require the assistance of a translator are permitted double the allotted time of speakers who do not require the assistance of a translator. Furthermore, a speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another speaker. Also, this evening, some individuals like to voice their opinions, but due to the COVID-19 crisis are unable to physically attend. We made provisions to allow written statements to be sent in to this board. It is essential to gain as much public input as possible, and we understand together we are stronger and build better solutions when we maximize our public input. I ask that you please observe these rules for the purpose of effectively accomplishing the business of the meeting in a timely manner. For those who are speaking, there are sanitation wipes at the podium. Our first speaker is Mr. Joe Palmer. Mr. Palmer?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Fort Worth ISD Board. Joe Palmer speaking on behalf of myself, obviously, on the appointment or the pending appointment of Joseph Ralph Martinez to the Tarrant Appraisal District Board of Directors. I've never met Mr. Martinez. I'm inclined to believe that he's a fully capable individual and would represent the school district very well on the Appraisal District Board. However, my understanding is that you have until December 15th to appoint this member of the Appraisal District Board, and I believe it would be appropriate to table, and I'm asking the board to table this vote until the next regular board meeting, and then between now and that time to explore fully why it is that the Appraisal District has experienced record protests from property owners. According to NBC5, according to a TAD board member who was interviewed by NBC5, in 2015 there were 57,000 protests. This last cycle there were 208,000. That represents an increase of 265%. And this rate of increase is not replicated or even found similar in Dallas County, Travis County, Harris County, or El Paso. So there is a problem with the TAD, and I would submit to the board that you're reasonable people. I think that you need to know what it is that's caused that before you appoint somebody to the board of directors of TAD. You have until December 15th. You have plenty of time. The goal is to run an efficient and accurate appraisal district that is fair, that puts the taxpayers on equal footing with the taxing entities. I know Mr. Martinez is a former Fort Worth Independent School District trustee, but your criteria has to reach beyond that. I, as a taxpayer, I've explained to you briefly before that my taxes are too high. I pay almost $5,000 this year for a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house that needs renovation. When I went before the Appraisal Review Board and I had to fight off the Appraisal District representative, the Appraisal District representative said, well, based on the condition and the pictures you've shown and the bids to fix your house, we're going to put it at fair condition and not good condition. I said, well, what is your definition of the term fair that you're relying on? She said, well, it's on the website. I said, well, we're in a hearing, so for the benefit of the hearing, could you please explain to the Appraisal District Review Board what your definition is? She said, well, I couldn't begin to presume to give the definition. I said, okay, well, the definition's not provided. Any reasonable person, I would submit, would see the property and say that this is not a fair condition house, that this is leaning on poor condition. Well, the Appraisal Review Board is not bound to base their decision on any evidence that I've provided. So my point in this is the appraisal district, if they had not provided an inflated value on my property, I would not have had to try to make the case to get it lowered to where it really is. So I hold accountable every member of the Appraisal District Board. I hold accountable for all the behavior and all of the practices of the people that work for that district. I think that's highly reasonable. So again, I'm asking for a table until next regular meeting, until such time as we can understand what's going on TAD. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. At this time, we will recess and reconvene in the board conference room for executive session. The time is 5:37 p.m. The date is Tuesday, October 12, 2021. We will now recess and reconvene for executive session as authorized by Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code under Sections 551, 071, 2, 4, and 6. In accordance with the open meetings law, this board opened the meeting at 5:31 PM with the quorum present, recessed and reconvened open session, adjourned regular session, convened executive session, adjourned executive session, and now reconvened open session at 5:50 PM with a quorum present. We'll move on to number 6, action items. Action item A, discussion and action to approve resolution to nominate a candidate regarding the Tarrant Appraisal District Board of Directors. Do I have a motion? Trustee Evans? Trustee Evans, you have the motion?
Yes,
And Lou Abenos has the second. Any discussion?
No.
Okay. Read the motion, please. I'm sorry.
I move that we nominate J.R. Martinez for our TAD representative.
We have the second from Lou Abenos. Any discussion? Please move to voting. And the motion passes unanimously. At this time, we will move to the back,
Right, we'll be live streaming.
and we will be live streaming from the back, but we will work on Lone Star governance in the back. questions I had for her was, if we have a constraint and we see that we could tweak it or do something better, when can we do that? So hopefully we can get this done in an efficient manner, but I want to make sure that this works for us and we get it right. So Monica, we're going to throw it to you so you can help us get it right.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me back. I'm very excited about continuing this work with you all today. So today we're going to be focusing on your board self-constraints. Okay, that's what we're going to be doing today. It is my understanding that you started this process a while back. However, you have new trustees. So we will be engaging in this process with these new trustees included. It is important that the board self-constraints that your board adopts, that there's ownership from all trustees are a part of the board. Okay, so just for me, just so I can know who's in the room, I feel like I'm back in the classroom taking attendance. So, yeah, well, let me ask this first. Do we have all trustees present, or who are we missing?
We have all trustees present.
All right.
Just how powerful you are.
The what? I'm sorry.
Couldn't hear you.
I didn't hear you. Can you repeat that?
You said you're very powerful.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we when you started this journey with Lone Star Governance, one of the first things that you developed was the goals that you provided to your superintendent. After you developed those goals, then your superintendent developed goal progress measures. You gave your superintendent some constraints, and then your superintendent went back and he developed constraint progress measures. As we think about your board self-constraints, these will also follow the same format of your superintendent constraints. So let's just refresh our memory very quickly. And I know that you probably know these by memory, right? Because that's one of the things we're working on to move to the right and move to that master's focus. So the first goal, can everybody read that okay? Yes, thank you for the thumbs up. All right, so the first outcome goal is focused on early literacy, and that's to increase the percentage of third grade students who score at meets grade level or above on STAR reading from 34% to 47% by August 2024. So that's goal number one. Goal number two is focusing on early math. So increase the percentage of third grade students who score at meets grade level or above on STAR mathematics from 34% to 45% by August 2024. And our last goal is focused on college, career, and military readiness. Increase the percentage of students graduating with a CCMR indicator from 43% to 48% by August 2024. So those are the goals. Now, as you gave these goals to your superintendent, you gave some constraints around those goals. And let me quickly find, okay, we're not gonna look at the emergency constraints. You have 1, 2, 3 emergency constraints. So let's go to constraint number 4. Constraint number 4 has to do with equity, your equity policy AE. So the superintendent shall not operate without actively monitoring and working to eliminate the loss of instructional time. Constraint number 5 is about equity. The superintendent shall not operate without examining the enrollment process and data annually to ensure no inequitable impact on students of color. Okay, so we're all set with those goals and constraints. As we look at our framework, that one that we used last month, and the reason why we're here, one of our next steps is then to adopt as a board 1 to 5 board self-constraints. And these board self-constraints are going to follow the same language of the constraints to your superintendent. The board shall not, ... Okay. These board self-constraints are not going to be smart. We're not going to have a target. We're not going to have a baseline. We're not going to have a deadline. These board self-constraints would just be behaviors that as a board, we will not going to be engaging on to support our superintendent in the attainment of those goals. Okay. Now, after, I know that you attended the 2-day Lone Star Governance Workshop a while back. Some of you have not had the opportunity to attend that 2-day LSG workshop. However, during that workshop, we talked about 2 mindsets. I know it's been a while. It's been a lot of sleeps. Who remembers what those 2 mindsets are? Okay.
Answer the question for the class, man. Coach.
Try not to be that one.
I need to go be that one.
I am the genesis
Yes. I am the genesis
of transformation.
of transformation.
Yes, I am the genesis of transformation. Don't be looking to Cito to give you the answer.
Oh, yeah, we going there.
So yeah, the first one is I am the genesis of transformation, right? And what does I am the genesis of transformation mean? Those of you that were present, Cinto, sip it for now. What does I am the genesis of transformation mean? What is that new mindset that we would like to implement with this piece?
Yeah, it simply means that the change begins with, in my instance, me, to look inward about how I could be better for change to come, not simply pointing the finger outwardly to have blame, but to be willing to see what it is I could do better for better outcomes.
Yes, that was beautifully stated. Change starts with me, and I'm not going to wait until someone else is going to make that change because I'm responsible for me. So if I want to see a change, that will start with me. As we think about these board self-constraints, I want you to think about your own behavior. Don't be pointing fingers. Don't be thinking about what someone else does or doesn't do. Think about your behavior and what could you do to be better? What behavior could you change to improve student outcomes? And what behavior should you not engage on as your superintendent is trying to get your students to meet those 3 student outcome goals that you gave him? Okay, so that's the first mindset. Great job. Let's give him a round of applause. You got the first mindset right. What is the second mindset? Cinto, no talking yet.
Hey, I thought you was calling. That was gonna be easy.
What was the second mindset? This mindset has to do with integrity.
Have integrity.
Integrity and goals.
Yeah, I don't think we know, Monica.
All right, Cinto, help us out.
Is it the common pretending?
The common pretending, yeah. So the common pretending is that I can have, I can have my integrity, and then, I can have very good reasons for why I'm not doing what I said that I'm going to do. And I can still pretend that I'm going to be able to access my goals. So that's the common pretending, that non-integrity plus a very good excuse will give me access to my goals. So the mindset that we invite you to think about is integrity is my access to goals. And when we're talking about integrity, it's about, did you say what you said that you were going to do by the time you said you were going to do it, to the degree that you allowed others to believe that you were going to do it. That's what we're using for integrity. We're not going to be using any other definitions or any other measures. But when we're talking about integrity, is the thing to think about is, did I do what I said I was going to do by the time I said I was going to do it in a way that I said I was going to do it? Okay, so we have those 2 mindsets. And with those 2 mindsets, we open this window of opportunity to change our adult behavior and improve those student outcomes. At the end of LSG, of those 2 days, we provided an opportunity to write 3 letters. One was for a staff, for a colleague, another one was for a student, and the third one was for you. And in those letters, you reflected on behaviors that you wanted to change. I know it's been a long time. So if you remember, yay. If you don't remember, that's okay. Okay. So for this next piece, as we're thinking about these board self-constraints, I'm going to be quiet for about 5 minutes. And while can you hear me? Oh, I lost you for a minute.
Yeah.
Now we're back. We couldn't hear you for a second there.
I couldn't hear you. Can you start over?
All right. What was the last thing that you all heard?
Right after everything about integrity.
The letters, you're talking about.
Write down letters.
Perfect. So I was hoping when you said, I talked about the letters, and then everybody was like, I got some puzzling looks. Okay, so it was then, I'm hoping because you were not able to hear me. But at the end of the 2 days of LSG, you wrote 3 letters, one to a colleague, one to a student, and one to yourself. And in those 3 letters, you wrote down your commitment. What commitment, what behavior were you going to change to support these the improvement of student outcomes? If you don't remember, that's okay. No worries. We just have to do a little bit more digging and engage in a deeper thought. Okay, so I'll be quiet for 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, this is what I would like for you to do. Go ahead and grab a Post-it note and a pen or a pencil, or just somewhere to write on. And in these 5 minutes, I want you to think about which behaviors should the board not engage on to support the superintendent accomplish those goals. Which behaviors do we need to change as a board to be more effective and to have a positive impact in those student outcomes? Okay, I'll start my timer. Are we clear about the task? Yes?
Believe so.
Think so.
All right.
Monica, do you want us to write down as many as we can think of, or are we all just trying to come up with one?
You can write down, that's a great question. You can write down as many as you can think of. At least, please try to write 3. Try to come up with at least 3. Individually, this is not group work yet. You have an opportunity to work with a partner in a little bit. So just for now, individually come up with at least 3. Any other questions? All right, 5 minutes. You have about 2 minutes left. 2 minutes. All right, go ahead and finish writing that last thought. You have 1 minute left. All right, give me a thumbs up if you have at least 3 behaviors there. Do we have at least 3? Thank you, thank you. I see 2, 3, 4, 5, thank you, 6, 7, okay. All right, perfect. So this is what we're gonna do next. We are going to now work with a partner. So with your partner, you are going to share at least your 3 other ones that you came up with. Share those with your partner. Your partner will share his or hers with you. And together, you are going to agree on 3. So out of the 6 or more that you may have collectively, go ahead and choose 3, the 3 that you think will benefit the board, those behaviors that we should not be engaging on as a board, okay? Some of those may sound the same, so maybe see if there's a connection there, but with your partner, come up with 3, okay? You may choose the person that's sitting next to you. So Ms. Toby and Mr. Kent, I believe you're together, right? You're sitting right next to each other?
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. So go ahead and partner up, share the ones that you have. And how many do you have to choose collectively? 3. Perfect. I'll set my timer for 6 minutes. And then if you need more time, I'll give you more time. But let's check in 6 minutes. Have fun.
I didn't come up with this. I only got one. The one, stay out at those words. Okay, I kind of have that same one too. And
What do you
then
got?
it's not really a constraint, but be available to be
I put the issue.
district ambassador or district cheerleader. Stay out of their way, but be available to administration. Yeah. I like the way you said that.
And they don't have to be like this.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Right.
So
I kind of have that person too, will not get out of my way. Yeah. It's like term, but the superintendent does the management or does the government. Yes, yeah. Respect the role that we're in. Yeah. The board will not undermine the work of the superintendent and director. Okay, yeah, that's okay. And then, I feel like this needs some words. I also don't want to be that we're not holding them accountable, right? But what I guess where I'm going with that is that we're not going to do things like the work. Right. And then the board will not, the board will not primarily focus on anything other than student outcomes. Yeah. So we're keeping, because there's other stuff we're gonna have to focus on. Yeah. But our primary focus, yes, has to be on outcomes. Yeah. So what was the second one? Well, just be a district ambassador, but like, so stay out of admin's way, but be available. So maybe we can bring the board will not overlook or ignore, the board will not ignore their role as, yeah. And, and actually these two things, and then yeah, I need, so, and I actually disappointed because
I think we go.
where I feel
For example, like when you say kids,
kind of a fine line. Yes, it is. And really, it's not our job. Right. Well, right. When I say administration. Yeah, I know. So, and I think I do try very hard. Yeah, like I was doing. And what they say is kind of how we with it. Oh, yeah. And so, but I knew it's not my job. Yeah, my job, so I've been, that. I told them, I said, yeah. Sure. But then I said, thank you.
Ideally, we can where we all have a relationship.
Yeah. Right, in there, yeah. And Joe called me.
Then we can save time there.
Yeah, it's not mine. And it's good that you step away. Yeah. If you don't, there's something I need to know, then you're welcome to share. But otherwise, I would like to have some of the right, and that this is, and then you're yeah, this is your problem to solve. Right, it's not my problem to solve. Well, I want to be careful to not make it so constrained in the sense that each situation sometimes requires an organic and natural response, and so I don't know, but it's that idea of staying in our lane or staying out of it. Not, but that can look differently every time. So maybe we want to say the board will not impede the superintendent's ability to manage the district. Yeah. But then how do we put it? I don't know. Do we need to write? I thought it was just kind of broad. I think, because I think some of these, you and I have the same sentiment. Stay out of their way, or stay in the lane. I like that one. I don't think I spelled that right. That's okay. And,
Presentation, if you remember.
and maybe and
We
keep
could be given.
student outcome dependent. Yeah, and how do you phrase that as an action?
True, but, so the thing is, I don't really mind the presentation. I don't want the presentation because it's.
I know, I'm an educator. I've been talking to these people, but now some people are saying no. So, did you have others? Underline the word.
That'd be nice.
Okay.
That's the point. I don't-
That's- I
I
like
don't
this
mind
one.
it. Like,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
so perfect.
We have to do this
So,
quickly. Yeah, and I think we can kind of work that into. Yes. I mean, I kind of think those two can go together. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so. And then, what was it?
Right. So let me just check where we are. That's the 6 minutes. Do we need extra time or do we already agree on the 3?
I think we're good.
We're good? Yes, I see some thumbs up. All right. Okay. So now this is going to be our next task. We are going to join another pair and you all are now going to have, well, instead of a quad, you're going to have a group of 5. Okay. So this is what we're going to do. Miss Toby, can you please join the table where Mr. Michael is? So if you can switch your table to Mr. Michael, where Mr. Michael is, and then that will be one group. Okay. So Mr. Michael, Miss Toby, and then Mr. Anael, am I saying your name correctly?
Yes.
All right. So those 2 pairs and Miss Toby, that will be one group. Mr. Kent, can you move to Cintos and Mr. Q's table, please?
Sure.
And that will be another group. Okay. So what you are going to do now, each pair is going to be sharing the 3 board self-constraints, those 3 behaviors that the board should not be engaging on. I believe there should be some chart paper around the room. So if you can, once you share your 3, then come up as a group with at least between 3 to 4. 3 to 4 board self-constraints. Once you have those 3 to 4, I don't know if someone can tell me if there is a chart paper around the room. So those 3 to 4, yes, thank you. Those 3 to 4 can be written down there. Once you have those, then choose one speaker for each group because that speaker is going to share those 3 to 5 board self-constraints. Okay, so can someone summarize? That was a lot of instructions. Can someone summarize with me? What are we gonna do?
Write 3 or 4 goals and share them out.
3 or 4 constraints.
Constraints.
Good, you're gonna write,
Poster board on the poster paper and one person's gonna share.
perfect. So everybody has an opportunity to share, okay? So in total, you should be sharing about 9 board self-constraints, and then out of those 9, pick those 3 to 5. I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. So share those, try to come to a consensus within those 10. If you need more time, I'll give you more time. We'll just check in 10. All right, have fun.
Do you have your 3?
I do. I took a picture of them.
Okay. All right. What are your 3? Is he talking to you? You too.
Well, we found some overlap, but it was I think he's philosophical, I think I'm technical. Yes, like, so I enjoyed that conversation, but I think overlap we had was like minimizing micromanagement behavior by way of if we're getting too far in the weeds into contracts, employees, budget. We talked about that one was one, and then special interest. Special interest infiltrating the boardroom. Or making sure that special interests don't infiltrate. There's a lot of
How are you defining special interest?
honestly, who's financing campaigns, and then
when they want certain agendas pushed across the
Okay.
table.
Goes a lot into that.
Do you have suggested wording?
Yeah.
Say that again?
Yes, I see what you're saying.
Wording.
Yeah.
Only the way I wrote it down was not allowing special interest to infiltrate the boardroom.
That's
Oh, I'm so surprised.
pretty straight to the.
I think the other one we could kind of summarize with coming to the board meeting prepared, meaning like what's on consent agenda, that we've all done our homework, we've asked the questions ahead of time.
Called staff ahead of time too.
Call
so
step
that- yeah,
ahead of time, so that anytime we spend on consent agenda, then if we didn't read our packet and we're coming in and then we're pulling items or we're still asking for even more inquiry, the consent agenda by design, we're supposed to just knock it all out with one swoop, right? So I've been guilty of it, coming in unprepared and then asking questions during consent.
Right.
But it's me
I think
holding
we all
myself-
have. We've all asked questions.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's super helpful for staff if you're asking the questions 3 days ahead of time, and then we'll pull it. We'll say, you know what, the board, we don't have enough information for the board to vote on it, so we'll do it, bring it next time, those kind of things.
And I know she said these aren't SMART goals, you know, we're not measuring.
These aren't gonna have measurable.
Right. But my only pushback to that is there have been plenty of times where I've asked that question to staff and I ask it out front
Yeah.
for the public. And I just don't want to be like mismeasured in those type of questions as they pertain to the consent agenda. You know, I don't think questions about the consent agenda is necessarily micromanaging. I don't know. I mean, it just, you know, on that constraint, and I know they're not measurable and it's not like it's, you know, but we also want to set goals and constraints that really do, just like we felt in the soup eval, those constraints didn't serve us, right? We want to make sure the constraints do make us more efficient and better as a board. So that'd be my pushback on that.
Yeah, and I'm not to say that it's 100%, it's that we have patterns. We talked about parallel processing. When we begin to deviate, and if we go down that pattern, and I'll just speak for what's true for me when I was president, along with this was also the other one discussed about adding presentations to our board monitoring calendar. There are definitely times that we want to have, like COVID, we wouldn't have thought that we were going to have a pandemic. So adding presentations about COVID, but that also, this was my truth. I had to deal with the balance of, okay, I'm gonna add another presentation, but I'm also cautioning you at a consent agenda, this is gonna prolong our meeting. And I hear the commentaries of, we need her to get out of here, we're here too late. Right, so as the president, that's a different role that I try to be very generous and cautious with that, but also at the same time, I'm the one that has the gavel when I gotta deal with people getting restless or,
Right.
hey, we've been here too long. So there's behaviors that we as a board have that contribute to the prolonging of meetings. And those aren't necessarily student outcome goal presentations. And those were necessary, but at some point, it's what AJ described. At some point, we got to get to where, if I want a presentation, it's how much common pretending do I have here? Am I doing this because I'm showboating for the community per se? And I'm assuming everybody's watching, which everybody was watching during COVID, right? But also is we're on this end of it, hopefully, how much of that is just prolonging the meeting because I'm in a common pretending zone and I'm prolonging the meeting. And I've deviated from the board monitoring calendar. And then the irony for me was the complaining that happened inside the board. That we're here longer than we should have been, and how many minutes did we lose comparable to student outcomes? To me, those behaviors go hand in hand, from consent agenda to extra presentations, minutes that we lose, or there's times that we want to lose minutes because it's a COVID-19 presentation. It's just patterns that I noticed. And then when we go down that road, I've noticed how we've been deviating more and more and more because one turns into two and two turns into three. The next thing you know, it's now a new pattern in our boardroom again. And I think after LSU, we came back pretty fine too. But just food for thought for us as a board.
So I'm also hearing you say it's good for us to recalibrate
Absolutely.
periodically and to make sure that we're all on that same page, which is why we're supposed to go through the training every 2 years anyway. Because when she said, what are those two things? I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, I was like, that was a long time ago. I think our first one is very similar to your first one, and it's basically just staying in our lane. Management does management. Board does governance. Or superintendent does management. Board does governance. The second one was, this was CJ's, was that we are, that the board acts as ambassadors for the district with the public. with the
Well,
general public.
and of course, how would we phrase that negatively? We didn't get that far. But in the, as a constraint.
Because we got,
Yeah.
no, I'm
But-
laughing because what you gotta do,
So,
right?
like staying in our lane or like staying out of the administration's way, but while simultaneously being available to you for anything with regards to community communication,
Sure.
anything. So that's kind of like the flip side of that,
Right.
stay in our lane point.
I think that goes along with the micromanaging.
Yeah, but it's helpful for the administration to know if your communities are concerned about something,
Right.
they come directly to me or through you and say, hey, I'm hearing this out in the community. 'Cause
Right.
it's having multiple sets of eyes and ears out there helps us determine what's really happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I hope, when I do that, I don't necessarily intend for anybody to act upon it. This is, here it is.
Yeah, and
Use
that's,
this
yeah,
information, that's how it will be most helpful.
yeah, and that's really, really helpful to articulate because, I've been in this a long time and
Well, you can't read my
And
mind.
no, and employees hear the suggestion of a supervisor as a directive. Dr. Skidmore, have you ever thought about, blue, painting the buses blue? And then I feel like, I'm being told to paint the buses blue. So as long as like that is an explicit part of, hey, I'm hearing this, you do that too on your
I
emails.
normally
You
put
just-
like,
yeah.
do with this
Yeah,
information
you
what
say-
you wish.
You said, Karen, it's 11 o'clock. Please don't act on this right
Yeah,
now.
I do.
And then she writes you back.
Yes, and
I'm
then
on
she
it.
acts on
11:15.
And then our third one was keeping the student outcomes as the primary
Yeah.
focus. That the board will not allow something to take the place of student outcomes as a primary focus or something. That's not very well
Which goes with
worded.
your first one.
That we got to keep kids, and really that should be our first one, I think. The kids have got to continue, they've got to be the focus. Do we have more?
Yeah, so Toby and I worked on this too. And just a couple things. One, and Cito, you're kind of the expert on this. Like from an administrator perspective, I don't have a problem with hey, what's the answer to this consent agenda item B17 on, and then asking the same question out in the public. Because I know you sometimes have to communicate to the public. What hurts our relationship is when it feels like a gotcha. When you knew you had a question for a week but you wait till watch us tap dance out there. The previous board did that a lot. So Toby and I came up with and it's odd coming from the superintendent voice, so please forgive me. I'm telling you what your constraints are. Avoid behaviors that make it hard for the board to focus on student outcomes. What does that mean? Getting involved in personnel decisions, personnel issues. And again, that's a culture thing here. You when you visit a school, they run to you and say, hey, we need to work on this, and we get that. Vendor selection. That's kind of the outside world infiltrating the board. That's what Cito was talking about. And then the other piece I thought was good is me versus we. I know each one of you has to represent your slice of the pizza, your district, but there are issues that are necessary for the greater good.
That was one of his three.
Right.
How'd you word it?
Basically, don't neglect the entire district for your period.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I think we oversimplify that, and we think politically people don't want that. But the polling that we did for the board, the concept of parity was really popular. So when I go into West Fort Worth and I say, we have to build a new elementary for the overcrowding in November, but we're gonna do 3 more on the east side and the south side, that's popular. Where you would think it's kind of me, but I think that there is a sense, at least at some level in Fort Worth, where I do want the kids on that side of town to have equal opportunity.
Yeah.
All right, so let's pause really quick, if I can have your attention. That was a little bit over 10 minutes. Do we need more time or do we already have our 3 statements?
Yeah, we haven't written anything.
Just a little bit. I'm ready. I'm ready for
Oh,
it.
no, we got right up there.
Oh,
All right, so between 3 to 6 minutes, how much more time do we need?
What have you got? How many have you
6.
got?
6.
I've got
6 minutes?
I got the 2 he's given.
Did you?
All right, I'll set the timer for 6. You have 6 minutes to complete the activity.
I think we probably have an agreement on that one that was worded, avoid behaviors making it hard to focus on student outcomes. Right. And I don't know if she's gonna want us to be more technical,
Yeah,
more
that's-
detailed.
Say that,
That's very
that
broad.
inhibit our focus
Yeah,
on
that was-
student outcomes. Sorry, I'm wordsmithing, but
Yeah, and then the examples that I give are the personnel stuff, vendor selection, me versus we.
can I just say, when there's personal things, I am very happy to say,
Yeah.
this is somebody else's problem.
And it takes you, it gets you off the hook.
I know,
What do you
I'm
want to
happy.
tell
I
the
dealt with
company? You know, like
personnel
that.
this morning and I said,
Well,
I'm bringing it to your attention.
Right.
It's your job now to do something about it.
Exactly.
And I trust you to do that. And I trust
And then
you are
hold and then
doing
hold
your
me- hold
Karen.
us accountable if we fumble the ball on that.
Yeah.
Lessons student outcomes.
Yeah, I've got that one, which I think encompasses what all 3 of the groups spoke about.
Do you want to do one about, because I think we all 3 also talked about staying in our lane. But don't word it that way. About,
Yeah.
you said not micromanaging and then you used, what was the terminology?
I like the personnel issues, but yeah, that's one.
So I thought I kind of put staying in your lane,
Yeah.
micromanagement, all under here.
Oh,
Just because
okay.
we said avoiding
What?
behaviors.
That's true. Okay.
The point about infiltration, the outside infiltrating the boardroom and the vendor selection, I think there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah, for me, I mean, that's just, I'm just,
Special
yeah, I mean, and part of it is just because I know that as we're gonna, we want to be able as a board to point back, it's kind of like the agreements, we want to point back at something. This one, I think, could encompass a lot of those things that all 3 groups are discussing. But I'm also thinking like, what are some specific things that might come up in the near future? And I don't want to regret having kept my mouth shut and then it happened. And I'm like, wait, hold on. That's something I wanted to put on it.
But you know what? I'm happy to have something that says, you know what, I appreciate you reaching out to me, but we had agreed as a board and this is a constraint. And so my hands are tied.
That's why Lone Star governance is good.
Yeah.
Because it gives you,
It gives me a tool.
it gives you a
me
tool to say, thank you,
Yeah.
constituent, but I can't rig the
Yeah.
system for your company.
And I actually really thought the no problem for media was one of them, and I really thought we had that.
I think that's a board
agreement.
policy that the
No.
president.
Well, anyway, but I couldn't find
Maybe I
it.
heard it from
But anyway,
you.
I thought it was like, it was a constraint we had already done. But to me,
You
that's,
have about 2 minutes left. 2 minutes.
it's
Yeah.
student achievement, because that's the
I mean,
me.
but that's
versus
almost
we.
too broad. I mean, that's
That's
all
pretty
of them,
broad,
right? It encompasses every one of them.
I agree.
Right, you know,
Right.
that encompasses every constraint we could have.
Yeah.
Because all the rest of them are gonna be
Right.
behaviors that. It's about. So, you kind of need to put the other ones up there.
Not allowing special interests to influence decisions.
I think you can leave it at that and we'll find it.
What's the 3rd one? Ambassadors, the board acts
I
as
like that.
ambassadors of the public.
I like that, you know, like, and you kind of demonstrated that a couple of ways in terms of, I may not agree with this, but I'm not gonna go out there and
Be against.
advocate
Right.
against it. You know,
Well, I do think this board agrees to disagree very well.
No, they got three. I know, so say we're gonna have like nine. We can have up to five total.
I know, I need to. You're about the TIF process.
Well, no, I have it.
We might.
All right.
And then that's on the type of need to be said.
So from my perspective, it looks like we already have our agreed board self-constraints. Does that look, am I right? Everybody has their own? Yes? How many do we have? Is it 3 and 3?
3 and 3.
Perfect. Okay. So who's going to be the volunteer or voluntold from each group? So this is what we're going to do. As you're sharing your board self-constraints that you came up with, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well. And as you're sharing what you typed, I'm going to be writing those on my screen as well. Okay. And then we will figure out how those, if they look the same, if they're similar, and then we will get to choose between 1 to 5 board self-constraints. So who wants to go first? Who'll be the first one to share?
Our number one was, we will not manage day-to-day operations.
Okay. Operations, thank you. Number 2.
Was, we will not engage in negative communication.
Thank you. And the last one?
We will not engage in behaviors that do not support positive student outcomes.
That's a good way to say that.
Outcomes. Great job. Thank you so much. All right, second group. What do you have?
Doesn't sound like it's coming out of the superintendent's voice.
I don't know, can you?
I know, I was like, okay, not Mr. Kent. This can be CJ or Mr.
Okay,
Q.
I'll
All
read.
right.
The first one, avoid behaviors that inhibit our focus on student outcomes. Second one is not allowing special interests to influence decisions.
Decisions of the board.
Well, we just left it at that. We'll have to.
Decisions. Okay.
And then the third one is board acts as ambassadors with the public.
Acts.
Acts, ACT.
Oh.
But that's not really a negative. We need to work with the wording on that.
That's okay. We will work on the words meeting later with the public. Okay.
Whatever the opposite of investor.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Informational terror.
we have those 6. Do any of those, do they look the same? Do they sound the same? Do you see any connections from the first column to the second column?
2 on column 1 and 3 on column 2 are very similar, just inversely stated.
Okay, so let me do these easier. 1A. 2A. And 3A. And these will be 1B, 2B, and 3B. All right. So tell me again, which ones look the same?
2A and 3B are similar.
Okay. So we will not engage in negative communication, and the board shall not act as ambassadors with the public.
No, shall.
Shall.
So we have to flip that.
So
Yeah. So, okay. So the board, yeah. So the board, shall not act as ambassadors with the public, right? That's not what we're going to be doing.
That wasn't the idea we were trying to arrive at. So
Okay.
what's the opposite of an ambassador? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'm wondering if we leave the word ambassador, but the board shall not allow something to, I mean, this is terrible wording, but shall not allow anything to prevent us from being ambassadors with the public. You see what I'm saying?
Or we fix it by changing the first phrase, the board either collectively or through the actions of the members shall avoid behaviors that
Yeah, I
influence.
think,
Yeah.
Like, just take the not out of the front and then each one gets to,
That's what makes it a constraint.
yeah.
oh, yeah.
But is it shall not advocate against?
Yeah, that's good.
Well, that's a good one.
Shall not advocate against the
Against,
administration.
Against whatever the,
well, or,
I don't know.
The district.
the greater good of the district.
or a shall not advocate against board, something the board approved, so, you know, a board approved action.
is that the same thing as being ambassadors with the public?
Yeah, but what we're saying is the
2A and
precursor,
3B.
yeah, the prompt is shall not do something.
I see, okay. I think 3A and, I mean, 3A and 1B are very similar.
So 3A and 1B.
Critic should not be a critic of, it's the opposite of advocate.
Yeah, shall not criticize.
Okay.
Antagonist, opponent.
Okay, so criticize, are we still on 3B?
The talk was about on 3B to change the word advocate against, just to put the board shall not criticize board approved actions and take out advocate against.
Okay. So the board shall not criticize board approved actions. And it was said then that 2A and 3B are kind of the same, right?
Yeah, that's negative.
So 2A and 3B. Okay. So we will not manage day-to-day operations, 1A, and then avoid behaviors that inhibit our focus on student outcomes.
That's already down below. It's the 2B is the one that the not allowing special interest to influence decisions. Is the one we haven't moved down to the bottom.
All right. So this one is shall not allow special interest to influence decisions. Is this connected to anyone on the left or the right? No, right? I mean, none of the left?
No.
Okay. And then 1B stands on its own as well, right? There's no connections?
That's already, that's connected to 3A.
Oh, that's right. 3A right here, 2B, okay. And then we will not engage in behaviors that do not support positive student outcomes. And then 1A. There's no connection to 1A, right? On the second column?
No.
No.
Okay. All right. So this is what we just came up with, okay? Now, do you remember how many constraints, board self-constraints we can adopt?
Up to 5.
Up to 5. So we see a connection between we will not engage in behaviors that do not support positive student outcomes, and that's connected to avoiding behaviors that inhibit our focus on student outcomes. You did come up with one, so I have a copy of your board self-constraints that you developed in the past, and you actually do have one that is connected to the first one. So that's this one right here. The board shall not attempt to achieve an average less than 50% of meeting time focus on student outcomes per quarter. Is that kind of like along the same lines, or do we need to scratch the previous one, the one in the green box?
I'd say scratch.
Okay.
You scratch it.
Everybody else want to scratch?
No, it sounds like, so according to that, well, up there, it sounds like the one you're discussing now is actually number 2 on the constraints we had. If you look at the previous constraint, it's number 2. It sounds like that is more about what this one is.
So the new 1A is the old board's constraint 2.
Right.
Yes.
The same thing.
Let me do this.
The words are starting to swim.
Just so we can figure out which one is which. Like that.
Or the day-to-day, I don't know. Maybe I missed it.
Gray and pink. Okay. All right. So you're saying then that board constraint number 1 on my right, you see a connection to which one?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't see it the other way.
You have to blow up the right side. Can you make
I can't read it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So 1A is 2, is that what you were saying, Q?
Well, whichever one is the day-to-day operation one, is that what we on right now? Yeah, the day-to-day operation one is basically what number 2 is already.
So it doesn't, Monica, it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of agreement on the old constraint 1, but there is agreement that the purple on the bottom left is very similar to the old board constraint number 2.
Okay.
Can you read the full board constraint too?
The board shall not give or appear to give operational advice or instructions to the staff during the previous quarter.
The last year of the previous quarter doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But other than that, yes.
Yeah, just take the previous quarter thing up, like you said.
Yeah. Agree.
Now, as you adopt these board self-constraints, you are going to be self-evaluating against one every month. So let's say, for example, that we adopt 4 and we start in January. In January, you will self-evaluate on number 1. February, you do number 2. March, it will be number 3. April, it will be number 4. May, we start back with number 1. So every month, we're going to have the opportunity to self-evaluate on those. So we don't have to be necessarily specific about the quarters, because we're going to be doing that every month. We can use the one that you have in this board constraint number 2, or we can just go ahead and leave. We will not manage day-to-day operations. The board shall not manage day-to-day operations. Which one is clearer for you? Which one do you prefer? Because this needs to be clear for you all.
I like the old one. Yeah. The one in the blue box. That's my personal opinion. That's my I statement.
Okay.
I like it too, but the quarter thing, I think that should be out of there.
do
Why
that,
should we limit it
take off
to
during the
per
previous
quarter?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
I just like the way it says give operational advice or instructions
I like the way it says not or appear to give.
or peer to
Because
give.
sometimes, not this board, of course, but some other.
Yeah, so with some boards, we do have that issue, right? And even if we try, if it's with good intentions, some people may perceive that as you giving that advice. So I went ahead and I deleted the previous quarter, and it just says the board shall not give or appear to give operational advice or instructions to the staff. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Yes, I see some thumbs up. So let me see a thumbs up if you're good with it. Thumbs down if you're like no or need clarification. Okay, I see thumbs up. Mr. Anael, I cannot see you. You're hiding behind Mr. Michael. Are we good? Yes? Okay, thank you.
I'll put 2 thumbs up next time.
All right, so that one is a yes, and it replaces, we will not manage day-to-day operations, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so now let's look at allowing special interest to influence decisions. Do you see any on the past that ties to that one?
Can you blow up the past one again?
Allowing special interest, so the board shall not allow special interest to influence decisions.
There's nothing on there that's.
Is board constraint number 5 blank, or I just can't see it?
Blank.
That's blank.
Okay, all right.
Maybe that should be 5. No, that's a good idea. We should have up to 5. I think that.
Yeah.
Nothing matches that, so I think that's a good one.
Well, if you have 4, it rotates every trimester, you can evaluate each other. If you have 5, it won't, but if they can help us drive, then let's have 5, right?
All right, so how do we feel about not number, but about this one in gray, allowing special interest to influence decisions?
I think it speaks volumes. Stan, it's simple, but conveys the message of what we need to refrain from doing.
Is everybody clear with what is meant of, allowing special interest to influence decisions? Is this clear to the board?
Yes.
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 Okay. Thank you, Mr. Anel. I see your thumbs up. All right, so this one, do we want to keep it? Do we want to keep thinking about it? Or are we ready to commit to it?
Keep it. Commit to it.
We're committing, so give me a thumbs up. Are we going to keep that one, committing as it is? Thank you. All right. Now, we will not engage in negative communication. Shall not criticize board approved actions.
I feel someone over there.
I'm not sure if do we have any on the right that ties to it? No, right?
Can you move that one, the left over a little bit so we can see? Okay, thanks.
Number 3 says communication, but it's not the same.
Yeah, nothing on the old ones refers to that.
Uh-huh. All right, so the board shall not engage in negative communication, or the board shall not criticize board approved actions.
Put and or.
I think those are 2 different things.
Okay.
I mean, they're similar and they fit together in the same constraint, but I don't think they're the same thing.
No, I'm saying if you say.
Yeah, I know, that's why you're
And
saying
they-
and.
They go
Right,
together
will
really
not
easily.
engage in communication and or criticize board approved action.
Does 3B allow me to criticize Dr. Scribner or Ms. Molinar?
Yeah.
Because it says board, so. I mean, I can sit there and criticize them all day long. I just can't criticize.
No, I mean, I think the point here is on Tuesday night, we voted to do this. And then on Wednesday, so you know what? I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing the vote on that.
That's a great point by Mr. Michael, though. So notice how at the top, once we adopt this, it's going to say the board, either collectively or through the actions of individual board members, shall not. So I can either, individually, I'm not going to be engaging in the negative communication or criticize board approved actions, either individually or as a board. So that really holds us accountable for behaviors as a team, but then also my behavior individually as well.
So I have a question about the wording and particularly to Cinto, on something like this, do you see any pitfalls just having worked with other boards establishing constraints? You know, because what we don't want to do is come across like we're not, you know, holding administration accountable, right? But we want to also, you know, to me that reads, if you're outvoted, you don't go blab to the media, you know, and air sour grapes or whatever, you know, I know I'm mixing metaphors, but you know what I mean? So that's, but what pitfalls are we not anticipating with that wording that could hold us down the road? That's a good question.
I think to keep in mind is that the constraints is, particularly the board constraints, is it's kind of like the agreements where we create that culture where we hold ourselves accountable. We're having a roundtable conversation, and I really think that this one's kind of fluid, because what I think may be negative may not be interpreted as negative by somebody else. But it will give us an opportunity to take a pause and have a dialogue around, hey, like, I feel like maybe we're stepping out on this constraint and we can push back on one another. So I think that aligns with kind of the one that I believe that I violated when we did the votes last year on the, like we had made an agreement that when the vote's made, we would stick to it, but it's really explosive times. So there might be times that we need to revisit, and as much as I want to adhere to that constraint, we have a vote on reopening schools or masks or whatever the hottest topic is. And I think just for me, it would be to clearly state why I believe that I'm going to deviate from this one time. I was mentioning to my colleagues over here that it's when I get into a pattern of going outside, coloring outside of the line per se, right? You can do it once, but if I do it twice, now everyone else picks up on that pattern. That's why I am the genesis of transformation and the common pretending are so significant on the mindset. If I allow myself to do it, then I'm giving permission for someone else around me to do it.
Now, this piece of the negative, will not engage in negative communication like that. Everybody may have a different understanding for that, right? When you're having these board meetings and when you're talking about different topics that are very close to you and the community that you represent, and as you're making those decisions, like, the expectations should be for everybody to share their point of view and really fight for what you believe will be best for all students. But in that same token of how you're going to fight to share your point of view, then it's also about listening to others and engage in those deep, crucial, hard conversations when that voting, before that voting takes place. Once that vote takes place, though, the most powerful thing that you can do for your kids is to come out as a united team and say, yes, this is what we voted for. This is what the board, adopted or approved, rather than, well, I told them that we didn't want that, but they decided. Once again, we go to that mindset, right? They are the genesis of transformation. Once they decide to think like me, then this is when we're going to be making that change. So we need to differentiate and understand what is meant by that negative communication. I think that the one on the right is clear, right? Shall not criticize board approved actions. And that's where we show up as a team. We have those difficult conversations during our board meetings, but once we make a decision as a board, even if I didn't vote for that, or if I don't approve it, I don't agree, the best thing I can do for the students that I represent is show that united front to the community. So if that's one of those behaviors that may be stopping us right now, that would be a very good board self-constraint. Now, a question was asked earlier, how often can we modify those board self-constraints? And that depends. Jacinto was talking about those patterns, right? And it's very easy for us to go back to patterns when we're in difficult situations. So once we're able to begin to behave in a way that's going to move us to the attainment of our goals, and we establish a new pattern, and those, board self-constrained behaviors may not be happening anymore, then that would be a good time for us to go back and say, okay, we are not managing or trying to appear like we're managing day-to-day operations. Let's go ahead and scratch that one because we don't need it anymore. Let's think about a new board self-constraint that's going to help us out. So that's going to depend on you. Okay. So in thinking about the one in blue, we will not engage in negative communication, shall not criticize board approved actions. I hear that those two are different. How will we want to, which one, do we want to keep just one? Do we want to keep both? Do we want to reword them? What do we want to do?
So I definitely understand the connotation of negative communication. I don't know how much I'm jiving with the criticize aspect. So, I mean, the thing, so I don't want to, and I don't believe I have as of yet, at least, go out and negatively speak down on colleague or superintendent administration or even decisions that have been made thus far.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem we have, but I
Right.
mean, I think we all already kind of are doing this naturally.
Right. But to say I can never criticize them,
Yeah.
I don't know if I can hear that.
Right. Because there's something that may warrant criticism.
Yeah, because if something happened to where I feel like we harming kids, I want to be able to say that.
Right.
And I'm like, well, we voted, y'all. It was like, no, we voted, and it has being followed. That don't mean I agree with it.
Right.
And it's not about going out on some kind of smear campaign. Or I said a negative comment. I think so. I feel like someone here can criticize me without having negative comments. You know what I'm saying? I think we big boys and girls enough for that to occur. But to not be able to criticize at all.
To combine those to go, we will not engage in negative communication by criticizing board approved actions.
No, because I deserve the right to criticize anything, basically. I mean, so, and like I said, not purpose, like that's not, I said, at least to this point, at least to the best of my knowledge, I don't even feel like I have done that. But I cannot say there's nothing that's going to occur here. That I'm not going to feel like I'm going to criticize what occurred. And
be positive. I'm positive with the action the board took.
And I'm normally positive, I'm saying, but I'm just, I mean,
Well,
so.
like Cito said,
Yeah.
if you do violate it or step outside the lines, there's a reason, but does it become a pattern?
Sure. But why build something in where I got like a mulligan?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like.
So let me do this. Let me go back and brainstorm and come up with some examples of what I think might be able to cover these two without having any unintended consequences. And then I can present my suggestions to you, and then you get to, brainstorm and decide and, play around with the one that I present. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good. Just work on that word criticize. Yeah.
Okay, so work on criticize. We don't like the word criticize.
Well,
okay.
Statement Q doesn't, somebody else might. Yeah.
Is that okay? Is that good? Do we agree with that?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So now let's talk about the ones in yellow. We will not engage in behaviors that do not support the positive student outcomes. The board shall not, okay, so this one we will have to play with it, right? But pretty much avoid behaviors that inhibit our focus on student outcomes. These are pretty similar, right? They're just worded different, and one is using the language that we want. So which one sounds better for you? The one on the left or the one on the right?
I think you just told right.
So it shouldn't be shall not avoid.
Right.
I'm not inhibit.
Shall not inhibit, yeah.
Shall not.
Well, no.
Well, we shall not participate in behaviors that inhibit our focus on students.
Right.
Good catch.
Yeah.
I
So-
do like that there's not the word not in there twice.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so for clarification purposes, what does that mean? I feel like that's kind of vague. So what does that mean to not participate in behaviors that inhibit our focus on student outcomes?
That's a good one.
Anybody can speak to it if they want to.
Yeah, so what type of behaviors are we talking about?
Bringing issues into meetings that are focused on other things and kind of, yeah, or
Is that something we do?
well, not even necessarily on the agenda if they're not, I mean, they could be on the agenda and they could be just not focused on student outcomes. And we, it's kind of like we, even though we don't do this, but we kind of filibuster in order to use that time and then we're not talking about student outcomes. I don't know. That's kind of a stretch. We don't have that issue.
Well, I guess I'm also trying to figure out what I'm agreeing to, because maybe there's blind spots of something I'm doing that is participating in inhibiting our focus. But then two, also us understanding what it is that we're agreeing to in the first place.
I think that that's something that we were thinking about coming into the new group, that this is what we're not gonna do. I don't know if that's from previous whatever, but we were saying we were gonna do this.
Yeah, but
We
I guess,
haven't done it,
I guess
so
what is this
now-
though? Yeah. But what is the this? I guess is what I'm asking.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've got some based on history, right? And I'm glad that we framed it that way, that maybe not necessarily here, but things that I think could creep back in and really hinder us. To me, it's micromanagement behavior, delving into specific kind of like what we discussed, micromanagement of contracts, employees, budget, just getting too far into the weeds. Other behaviors to me, kind of more on the, we had a good conversation, especially CJ and I kind of had a little good pushing of, being thoroughly prepared for board meetings, asking our questions about a consent agenda. And now a good point too, right? If our questions aren't answered, then we ought to have that conversation too, right? If I'm asking questions, trying to be prepared for the board meeting and I'm not getting the responses, then, that's different to me, because then we've got to get that clarified. But coming in and pulling items from consent or having a longer conversation on consent agenda item, and if that becomes the norm, I get that it doesn't happen all the time, but if we get into that pattern of doing it regularly, those to me are behaviors that, keep us not focused on student outcomes. Other one that I had was, and I mentioned this, like not allowing special interests to infiltrate our boardroom, knowing that there are special interests that are funding certain campaigns. And I'm just coming from the research side of what causes problems in boardrooms. These are the main topics: the micromanagement behavior, the behaviors not focused on student outcomes, and then the influence of special interests inside of a boardroom. So those are like some technical, tangible things that when I think about that, that's what I think about.
Well, and think about me versus we, when you're pushing, because it's good for your district, but it's not good for the entire district, but it will help you considerably.
Yeah, that's a good one. We discussed that as well. For sure.
Mhm. Well, and do we want in this constraint that we are now crafting the 50% that is our goal in the constraint? Do we want to include that measurement in the constraint? I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm asking a question.
So you're talking about what number one from last time, basically?
Yeah, where it quantifies it to some extent.
Yeah,
Based on minutes.
but they can roll in that participation we talked about.
yeah, do we want to include that in the one that we're crafting right now?
I thought they weren't supposed to be quantified. I thought that.
No, well,
Well, it's not quantifying, it's just saying, so we don't have a baseline, we don't have a target. And that's actually a great question to pose, because if we, as a board, are saying we're not going to spend less than 50% of our meeting focused on student outcomes, then that really takes care of the bringing issues that are not focused on student outcomes. It would take care of the not being prepared for board meetings, because if I'm not prepared, I may be asking questions, I may be taking more time to make those decisions. If I'm pulling items from the consent agenda and we're having to talk about those without the staff being aware, about the superintendent being aware, then that's going to eat into the 50% time. Bringing those special interest topics, right, to the boardroom, that may also impact. So engaging in these behaviors will impact your 50% focus on student outcomes.
which is our goal, with or without the constraint.
Right.
So we may not need it in the constraint, because that's our goal. I mean, that's our target anyway.
So, and I think that's one of the examples that's on the LSG manual anyway, that some district could use that. But another one that came to mind, Monica, it's, this is my statement from having been in the president role, was trying to manage how many presentations is too many. And so, right, I mean, COVID, again, I'm gonna acknowledge COVID was different when we're asking for COVID updates and presentations. While that wasn't necessarily student outcomes focused, it was one where the community definitely was tuning in and watching and seeing. But I had to work with this balance of how many presentations is too many. And then just to be real, like, you know, I would hear the chatter in our boardroom of, oh, you know, can we hurry up and be done? Or like, hey, you know, this is already going too late. But when I'm at agenda review, like that was my concern. Like if we're gonna add another presentation, it's gonna impact the 10 of us. And so we caught ourselves 10, 11, you know, o'clock at night. So just those are behaviors to me as well that, you know, that could inhibit us if we get in the habit. And that's the reason why the board monitoring calendar exists, so that we all know way ahead of time what the presentations are. And if we add from time to time, right, completely flexible, but just not get in the habit of always adding presentations. And it's kind of like what AJ gone over with us in governance training. Number of those probably could just be emailed to the entire board and we review the data.
Mhm.
And Q brought up a good point. So then, but what about the community that's looking for that information? Well, that's why we saw it on the latter parts of masters. We created two-way communication with the community so that that's not a concern. You know, I have this expectation that people are watching every single board meeting, listen to everything that I say, and that's not necessarily the case. So how do we as a board create that two-way communication so that that's not a concern of mine, that I have to have a presentation for everybody to tune in and watch, or at least that's my assumption.
Yeah, and along the same lines, you know, part of our work is going to be to review our policy. And as a board, you're going to own, you know, policy that relates to your goals, your constraints, your constraint progress measures and goal progress measures. So if it's superintendent work, the superintendent doesn't have to wait until there's a board meeting to share that information with the community. He can share that information, you know, whenever, however he wants. So it's finding different ways of disseminating that information where it's not about, you know, keeping that away from the community members, but during your board meetings, it's really about how are we focusing our work and our conversations and maximize the time that you are together without spending more than 2 hours to do the work that you need. All right, so I have some notes for the first one, so for the one in yellow. If you all don't mind, I'll give myself some homework and I'll go back and I'll try to come up with a couple of options for the one in yellow, with the idea of including the 50% as the anchor of the behaviors that we do not want to engage on. I'm gonna work on the one in blue maybe combining those two or giving you two different ideas on how those two are going to look like. And I'm going to work on that word, criticize, finding another way. So we're not giving ourselves what is it? An unintended consequence. And then you all agree to number 3, allowing the board shall not allow special interests to influence decisions. And then the board shall not give or appear to give operational advice on instructions to the staff. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll give myself some homework. Once I have this ready, I will share that with Ms. Toby, and then she will share that with you all. I'll give you some time to brainstorm, keep thinking about it. And at our next board meeting, we can spend about 30 minutes to have a discussion about those, and then come up with the ones that we want to keep. Does that work for the board?
Meeting at the end of October?
When is your next board meeting?
26th. Is that right? 26th of October. Oh, I know.
It ought to be September. We just don't do that.
October 26th, is that your next board meeting?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'll work on this. I'll try to give you a draft by next week. It will give you some time. We do not have to adopt anything on October 26th. We can continue to have these conversations, and then you will adopt once you're ready to, once you feel comfortable and understand what you're signing up for. We don't want any surprises.
We only have one meeting in November. Yeah, because of Thanksgiving and December.
All right. So are we good?
We're good.
We have no work and you have homework. Is that what you've done?
That's what I have done. I have some homework, but once I do my homework, then you all will have some homework.
Score. I knew you were going to score on us, Monica. Thank you so much. And please let us know if we can engage with you when you're doing the homework.
All right, I will. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. And on that, we are going to gavel out at 7:23.